And for more on the ongoing situation in Kashmir, I can bring in Kate Sullivan de Estrada, Associate Professor in the International Relations of South Asia at the University of Oxford. Good morning, Kate, and thank you for joining us. We've seen an escalation in the past 2 days between India and Pakistan. Is there a sense that we have two governments whose rhetoric on Kashmir has maybe backed themselves into a corner?
I definitely think that we are finding ourselves in an escalatory moment. What we've seen is India delivering a response to the terrorist attacks that were mentioned in your clip just then. And the response from India's perspective has sought to be non-escalatory. In fact, India's defense minister called it measured, non-escalatory, proportionate and responsible, and claimed that it was really just targeting terrorist infrastructure that it's seeking to dismantle. But from the Pakistani perspective, of course, the situation feels like one of aggression. And it's well known that Pakistan has a policy of retaliation plus. And I think we can certainly expect to see a response. We've also had the Pakistan defense minister suggesting that it won't take long to settle the score. So this is certainly an evolving and dynamic situation, and one to watch very carefully.
Now, there have been, to say the least, strained relations going back several decades between the two countries, and Jammu and Kashmir is probably the main flashpoint between them. It's claimed by both countries, administered in part by both. Just how intractable an issue is it?
I think anytime you have a dispute over territory, it is, of course, very, very emotive. Territory is so bound up with the idea of the modern sovereign nation state. States don't relinquish territory easily. But Kashmir has a particular symbolism for India and Pakistan. Both see the state as integral to their respective ideas of national identity. And of course, it has been the site of several wars, conflicts, crises over nearly 8 decades.
Now, what role might conflicts elsewhere in the world, particularly Gaza and Ukraine, where I suppose international norms have been upended over the past few years, could that influence the two countries in the coming weeks, particularly India?
I think there are two ways of looking at this. I mean, first of all, certainly in previous wars and crises, we saw a very strong mediation role from the United States. Now, this role has declined, starting really under the first Trump administration. Part of this has to do with the importance that India holds for the United States as a defense, a strategic partner, shall we say, amidst US worries about the growing influence of China. And part of it is about, obviously, Trump's hands-off approach internationally. I think we won't see very much pressure from the United States on India, particularly publicly. So that's one angle. The other angle, as you say, is changing international norms about the use of force and acts of violence. And experts have been commenting in the last sort of day or two about whether there's an unusually permissive space for India to conduct the kinds of missile strikes it did on Wednesday morning. I think there's also a strong domestic story here as well. India has faced increasing domestic pressure over recent years to respond very strongly and decisively to terror attacks. And of course, with each response, the last one happened in 2019, we see a sort of ratcheting up of India's reply. So there are a number of things, I think, at play here.
Now, Narendra Modi is one of those foreign leaders who actually has a fairly close relationship with Donald Trump. Is there a sense that perhaps Modi is emboldened by the Trump administration's hands-off approach on Kashmir?
I think in a sense, yes. I do think, though, there's been careful messaging around India's response. I think, as I said, the claims that this is measured, non-escalatory, they're, I think, an attempt to reassure the international community and the United States that India is not looking to have a sort of exponential escalation here. I think, yeah.
Just briefly, another power that has an interest in the region and indeed in Kashmir is China. What role might Beijing play, if any?
That's an interesting question. So in the crisis I mentioned before in 2019, this was a moment where India suffered a terror attack on 40 of its armed personnel, again in Indian-administered Kashmir. New players were on the scene to mediate. One of those was China, another was the UAE, another was Saudi Arabia. It's possible these players will be active again. With China, the picture's a bit unclear. So China has been very supportive of Pakistan historically, but of course we know that China faces its own internal threat from Islamist terrorism, and as a result, it's not quite clear what kind of a stance or how strong a stance China might take on India's actions. Of course, it's very clear as well that China will not want to see tensions escalate on what really is its southwest border with both India and Pakistan.
Thank you very much for that, Kate Sullivan de Estrada from the University of Oxford. Now, at least 90